Hello and welcome to this episode where we're reviewing another issue of Die Hard Gamefan. This one is Volume 1, Issue 6, which was for the May 1993 it came out in May 1993. Looks like it was still for $3.95. And as you can see, they're featuring Cool Spot here. So yet again, another game where not the most popular out there at the time and all that, but just kind of like that they were giving, again, a spotlight on some lesser known games, which Cool Spot ended up actually being a pretty cool game, and we'll get into that a little bit later as we go through these issues here. But this is a bigger one. It comes in at 114 pages, so let's just get going on it. So here, advertisement for the RBI 93 baseball game. Table of contents. I always thought this screenshot here looked pretty cool. And I remember being excited about this too, also, where it's like, oh, the Genesis is getting Street Fighter 2 now. That was pretty exciting. All right, so let's go over the editorial zone. Ooh, this one seems like it's a bit spicy. Let's see what Mr. Mullet Dave Halverson had to say. Welcome to Issue 6. We spent a lot of late nights on this one, so I hope you like it. This past month, mainly due to the upcoming release of Mortal Kombat, my mailbox filled with letters from concerned gamers regarding censorship. It seems like all of you Super NES or Super Nintendo owners already know Nintendo's going to hack the death moves out of Mortal Kombat. Doesn't Nintendo realize that the people who are going to buy this game have been playing it in the arcade for months? We've already seen the gore. You can't do anything about that now. It's funny, anyone at any age can flip on the TV and view the most horrendous carnage imaginable, but they have to take the goo out of Splatterhouse. Let's see. Today, Oprah interviews hemorrhoid sufferers who talk with aliens, and in other news, a man dressed like Ronald McDonald blew up a Burger King, and on Married with Children, Al's ripping farts and setting traps for the kids. Hey, if you don't like it, turn it off. So why doesn't the same apply for video games? Well, in my opinion, it's not so much Nintendo not wanting to expose you to it, as it is trying to avoid bad press. You see, there are special interest groups, people who have no lives, that have nothing to do but tell us why the world's such a mess and how they're going to fix it. It's funny how most of these people look like the kind that you spend your whole life trying to avoid. Anyway, they believe that after, let's say, a good game like Splatterhouse, we're all going to go and buy hockey masks and chainsaws and then cruise down the street wasting people. You're selling violence, they say, and I guess the big N hears them. So Nintendo, rather than rocking the boat in fear of lost revenue, just goes along, I guess. Basically, they're playing it safe. So here's what I think: being that gaming now covers a huge age group from 5 to 55. Why don't they just rate the games as they do movies? Or better yet, produce half of the titles with the violence and half without that way we could choose. If mom doesn't want you seeing Raiden's head exploding heads, she can buy the G version. But for those of us who think that's the best part of the game, we could buy the R version. Simple, isn't it? Maybe I should go apply at Nintendo. The fact is, linking games with violence is simply retarded. I'm pretty sure that most of us realize that games are not real. Just because we threw a fireball at Chun-Li doesn't mean Aunt B is going to become a crispy critter. For those of you who think games are real, seek psychiatric help. You are messed up. If these special interest groups are so concerned about our well-being, why don't they throw a rope around Geraldo, whose guests today are cross-dressers who sleep with power tools and leave the game industry alone? So, it goes without saying, I'm trying to just go over the information as it is. Apologize for some of the stuff that might have come across as a bit offensive and all. I'm just kind of reading the information as it stands here, in the text as it was written back then. It was different times and all, and it's some things were just more openly discussed, right, than say like they are now, for better or worse. Again, I'm just trying to read it as it is. So it looks like this is when they were starting to get into the whole thing about Mortal Kombat and it being censored and all that. And because that was a very pivotal moment in gaming history that really changed the industry and sort of set rules for it as well too, but at the same time was kind of a win for uh not having things censored, but there was some big implications though with it though. So yeah, it was an interesting time. Let's see, for a lot of that there, whatever else I cover in the that this magazine discuss, I'll read it and all that. But as I'm doing in my other podcast episode where I'm going through the years of gaming, it'll probably I believe 1993 was where that'll be a big story to cover at that point there as far as what happened with all this, because it is interesting what happened. But let's see. So we had a ad here for Time Gal. So the top 10 the most wanted in top 10. So for the top 10, number 1 was Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo, Sonic 2 on the Sega Genesis. Number 3 was Super Star Wars on the Super Nintendo. Number 4 was Streets of Rage 2 on the Genesis. Number 5 was Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo. Number 6 was Art of Fighting on the Neo Geo. That game seemed to be pretty popular amongst the Gamefan crowd anyways. But number 7 was Eco the Dolphin on the Genesis. Number 8 was World of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck on the Genesis, which is a great game. Number 9 is Death Valley Rally on the Super Nintendo. And number 10 was Cobra Command on the Sega CD. For the most wanted, number 1 was Star Fox on the Super Nintendo. Number 2 was Batman Return CD on the Sega CD. Number 3 was Sonic City on the Sega CD. Number 4 was Batman CD again. I think they have something off there. But number 5 was Battletoads on the Super Nintendo. Number 6 was Final Fight 2 on the Genesis. I believe that's going to be on the Super Nintendo. Number 7 was Bubsy on the Super Nintendo. Number 8 was Mortal Kombat on the Sega CD. Number 9 was Sylphid on the Mega CD. And number 10 was Landstalker on the Genesis. And then we have the Hocus Pocus section here. So it looks like we have some cheats here for Mazine Saga, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the Genesis, X-Men on the Genesis, Shadow of the Beast. That game always, I don't know, something about that game that always interested me back in the day. But yeah, these were kind of cool, right? And this is how we would get our cheats, right, for video games. And The Adventures of Monitor. He's still kind of doing his thing here. So basically, because the bad games are beating each other up, it's like, no, hey, try Street Fighter 2. So, I don't know if Echo the Dolphin would be the best game for him to control his rage, because I've played a little bit about that game. I'm not too super familiar with it, but from what I understand, the later part of that game gets extremely frustrating. So maybe that wasn't the best game for that. That's funny though. Oh, and then Mario is missing. This is sort of I don't even know what this is. I don't think it was really like I mean, it was a video game, obviously, but it was more of like a puzzle game of some sort. A little bit that I played about it, for some reason, it kind of reminded me of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. But I just know that a lot of people hated that game. So I haven't really played it too much to really know what it's all about. But the little bit that I did play certainly didn't really capture my attention. Okay, so here we go with the reviews now. So on their viewpoint section. So let's just read really quick what their picks were. So for Skid, so he picked, so you don't know how hard this is for me. I really, really wanted to pick Taz, but I keep having flashbacks and seeing spots. Sergeant Gamer said, this was a close call between Taz and Tecmo basketball. Since I haven't picked a sports game before, I'm going with Hoop. It's so smooth. Tom Slick, so Spot is my game of the month. The game represents everything that is right in gaming. No scaling, no mode 83, nothing. Just pure fun. So by mode 83, I'm sure he was referring to like a reference to like a mode 7 on the Super Nintendo. Mode 7 was cool. I think a lot of people enjoyed seeing that effect back then. But, excuse me, at least with this magazine, they were still very much about keeping games I mean, they were liking like new technology and stuff and all, but they were definitely still wanting to keep games more retro-ish and all. But the Inquirer's pick, so let's see, there were tons of excellent games this month, but of course, Mr. Fighting always picks a winner, and that was Fatal Fury 2. But yeah, let's see. So here's where they review Shining Force. So they give it an 89, 90, 82, 85. Let's see. I'll just read one real quick here. The one that got the highest rating. So let's see from Sergeant Gamer. So, oh yeah, commanding troops? No worries. Go to battle with the Sergeant. You ain't coming home. Shining Force is the ultimate combat simulation mixed with a great story. It kept me up for days. Over now. Global Gladiator. So they reviewed this game again because right, we looked at this earlier in an earlier magazine. But yeah, I remember this game was pretty well praised and it's fun. I enjoyed it. It was kind of a, you're two kids that have like you can have like these squirt guns and all that shoot out like slime. But the platforming in it was pretty cool and all that. So it was actually a decent game. But Cool Spot, yeah. So this game, I really did enjoy Cool Spot. I think that it was a really fun platformer, and based off of the spot on the 7-Up. So back in the day, I haven't really kept up with commercial nowadays and all that, but I don't think that that's a mascot anymore. But for 7-Up, so there's a red dot right between the 7 and the U, and they made a character out of that, like the mascot, where you had like these sunglasses, the shoes, arms, and gloves, and all that. And so they made a video game of that on the Super Nintendo and on the Sega Genesis, and I believe on the handhelds as well too. But yeah, it was just a really fun platforming game. I remember I really got into it and all, and the Genesis one, if I recall right, was the one that seemed to be a little bit better. Again, it just I never played the Super Nintendo version, but from what I recall back then, what they were saying, it played a little bit smoother and all that. Again, I could be wrong on that and all, but that's just the impression that I remember getting of this game here. But let's see, I'll just read one of the reviews here. So 96%. So here's some of the cleanest programming you will ever find on the Genesis. Spot is graphically perfect, fun and challenging start to finish. David Perry takes a red hockey puck with arms and legs and creates a masterpiece. Thanks, Dave. So David Perry, so you're going to see his name come up, in later issues. And so he was a developer, and he ultimately ended up being responsible for games like Earthworm Jim, which probably his more popular game, at least back in the day. Afterwards, I think more recently, he got himself involved with some other company and all that. So he left kind of the gaming, not maybe the gaming industry as a whole, but like, games as we know it, right? And I think he does like some, I don't know, he's some kind of a developer for programs or something like that. I think I heard somewhere. But, and my microphone's about to break, so let me fix it here. Okay. Afterburner 3 on the Sega CD. Yeah, I don't remember much about this game. I just remember it was getting bad grades all around, so it was something that just never really caught my interest. King of the Monsters. So again, this is a Neo Geo port. And this one here was one that was done pretty decently. So again, a good way to experience some Neo Geo games if, for pretty much all of us, right, that couldn't afford the Neo Geo. So let's see. So I'm just going to read this one here. So again, I can't say this for sure because again, I didn't play the Super Nintendo, but so this guy's saying this game blows the doors off of the Super Nintendo version. The graphics are good, the control is great, and most of all the challenge is perfect. Even the music is better than the Super Nintendo. I can't believe it's only 8 megs. Nice job, Takara. So again, right across the board for the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, they were doing really good ports of Neo Geo games. Probably the one that I remember the most is Samurai Showdown. And we'll see later, right, in the later issues when they start reviewing those. But both the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis got good ports of them. But, so they each one has their strengths and weaknesses over the others, right? Yeah, it was they were doing pretty good ports of Neo Geo games back then. But Flashback, oh yes, this is one of my favorite games on the Genesis when, again, eventually came out on the Super Nintendo. But again, one that, again, the Sega Genesis one would seem to have been done better. Let's see, I'll just read the highest review here. So So at 97%, there are some games you just have to have, and this is definitely one of them. Can you compare it to Out of This World? No. Here's what's better: graphics, color, animation, story, playability, and control. I guess that's about everything. Amazing. Yeah, I've never played Out of This World, but I really enjoyed Flashback, though. This is a great game here. Really enjoy it. But let's see, they were humans and Mutant League Football. These games were fun. Well, this one and the hockey one that came out later. RBI Baseball or RBI 93. Those games always seem to get decent reviews. Devastator on the Sega CD. Never really played that. Mazine Saga. So this game was originally in Japan only, but eventually came out to the States, and it's a cool game. I like it. It's kind of like a hack and slash game where then you fight the boss and it turns like into this one-on-one fighter. It was pretty cool. Tasmania. So Gamefan really liked this game. I've played it a little bit, and I don't know. It's all right, but you're basically. I mean, the cool thing about it is how it uses a scaling effect, right? Um, but yeah, I don't know. I couldn't really get into it too much. But then there's Bubsy, Pugsley's Adventures, Super Turrican. So I never played Super Turrican on the Super Nintendo, but some of the Turrican games that I have played are pretty cool. Super NBA Tecmo, excuse me, Cool World, Neo Geo, Dragon Ball Z, Great Battle, Dungeon Explorer 2, and Bonk 3 for the TurboGrafx. Ooh, Bonk 3 didn't get very good reviews, huh? Let me just read one real quick. I thought these games were always fairly decent. But okay, guys, let's make this Bonk the best ever. Should we add some scrolls? Boss? No way. It'd take too long and we'd have to learn everything new. Just use the old engine and throw in a big Roseanne bar bonk. You see, that's the problem. It's just another bonk. Where's the 8 megs? In his head? Oh, they didn't like it very much. Fatal Fury 2 got pretty decent reviews. And I like Fatal Fury 2, but the original arcade version, because I looked it up afterwards, because it's a version that was done where you can get like on the Neo Geo lineup of games on the Switch. It's hard as hell. Like even on the easiest setting, it's brutal. And so I looked it up afterwards, and yeah, it seems like that version is just really hard. Let's see. So this guy says Fatal Fury 2 is my favorite fighting game yet. Finally, combos are now possible, and there are a total of 12 characters, 8 which you can choose from. If you could pick the last 4 bosses, it would be as fun as Street Fighter 2. Oh. Super Sidekick Soccer. I played a little bit about this game. It's pretty fun. Advertisement for Pro Quarterback. This joystick here. And Sega Sector, where they have Sonic, Toe Jam and Earl, Green Dog, and Chakan. Interesting choice of characters. But for Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition, so this is where Champion Edition. So this is, at least for me personally, where I started seeing screenshots of this, and that it was getting, I think they had already been announcing that it was going to come out on the Sega Genesis, but to see it here, right, in pictures, I was super excited about this, right, because this is where I really felt that, the Sega Genesis could go toe-to-toe with the Super Nintendo. And it says, so Genesis owners, your time has come. Capcom has finally officially signed on with Sega, and the 16 meg Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition is on its way this June. I already know what you're going to ask. What's missing? Well, besides the Bison Redizzy combo, nothing. But that's especially good news since it. But what's especially good news is that the controller and ease of execution is better than the Super NES. Oh yeah, better processor, better game. The 68,000 is tried and true. Yeah, that's funny. Graphics. Seems like all I hear are Super NES donors complaining about 64 colors. Well, 64 colors have never looked better. So 64 colors is what the Sega Genesis could display on screen. That's what he's talking about there. So graphically, this 60 meg cart comes real close to the coin up. All of the line scrolls are here. The graphics are crisp, and the game moves at the same pace as a championship coin up. As for the music, for a Genesis cart, the tunes are excellent, and the voice is surprisingly close. So when you add all this up, you inevitably come out with one phenomenal deal on Street Fighter 2 Champion. Now, you don't have to go to the arcades and get your butt kicked. be as cheap as you want. So yeah, so I was really excited about this and all. The only thing that I was kind of a little concerned about was I didn't like the way how there was like the black bar underneath like the score and the life bars here. That eventually ended up getting fixed and all that, but that was just like the one thing, right, that I had a bit of concern on back then. But Shining Force, yeah. So again, great game. I have my save file right at the last boss, so I need to try to again just finally finish this game once and for all. Great game. Very streamlined for us dummies who like strategy RPGs but aren't, don't want them too super complex. So Mick and Mac as the Global Gladiators. So yeah, I do remember having fun with this game. It was another game that we rented based off of their recommendation here, and we liked it. Me and my brother. Okay, so here we go. Back about 6 months ago, in our first issue, which nobody saw, we did a review on Global Gladiators, and since then I haven't heard a word about it. Back then, I first saw Gladiators and did the review. I thought it was one of the games of the year for the Genesis, but unfortunately, it was released at the same time as Sonic 2 and just got passed over. The box art didn't help either. Somewhere an artist needs a job. So since it's too new for the graveyard, here you go. Oh, okay. So first of all, let me tell you to send my mind at ease. This game is not filled with burgers and fries. In fact, if you're took out the spinning M's and the lone Ronald McDonald, who is this guy grow up? It could very well have been called the Lost Boys in Slime World or Dream Journey or something like that. But the bottom line is that this one kick butt action platform game that no Sega owner should be without. So if you didn't get it, go find one and then cut out this page and replace the cover sleeve. Okay, so that's what happened. But yeah, but it's a cool spot. I remember looking at this and thought the graphics looked really impressive on the screenshots, and it is. It's a really nice looking game. So yeah, the cool spot thing, they're animated really well. The little intro's kind of cool, where he's surfing on that 7-Up bottle. Yeah, I'm kind of getting the itch to play this game again. Well, let's just read this review real quick here. So it's kind of hard to review though with the red text. So his mission: produce Genesis games that always amaze and amuse. His weapon: knowledge, creativity, and a development system. His enemy: time. His name is David Perry, and this time he's really done it. In a relatively short period of time, David Perry has taken what amounts to an animated bottle cap and once again broken new ground on the Sega Genesis. It seems like every time he makes a game, he redefines the boundaries just a little bit more. Spot is the kind of action platform fans dream about, incorporating pinpoint control, phenomenal animation, fun precision, jumping, and colorful high-risk graphics. Yeah, I remember beating this game back then and all that. The whole lot I don't remember about it. Hey, no scaling or rotation needed, just great programming. It has dawned on me recently that a lot of the so-called next generation games with all of the bells and whistles are the ones that bite. Sure, they may look neat, but let's not forget why we're all here, for a little diversion and a lot of fun. Spot brings me back to the basics with incredible style and great sense of humor. It's fun, period. If Virgin ever gets David Perry on a Sega CD tile, watch out. Random eye or muscle twitches may occur. Okay, so this is like the bonus levels. I think you're bouncing like on these soda bubbles. Batman Returns CD. So here they're still previewing it. So basically, Batman Returns, what it is just it takes the Genesis game, which was a average side scroller beat 'em up game, and adds these driving scenes where you're in a Batmobile or like the Bat boat, I guess, whatever that's called, and has some cool scaling effects on it. And the music was pretty cool too, also. And it's hard as hell. I remember I always wanted to play this game back then, just again from how excited they were always of playing it. I played the Sega Genesis version and beat it, and I played that one actually quite a bit. I used to borrow it from my cousins quite a bit. I think back then it was just because I was just, a big Batman fan. But in reality, the game wasn't that great. It was a hard game too, but I remember beating that game though still back then. Again, it was just one of those games that was so bad, and you just kept playing over and over till you beat it because it's all you kind of had. But So many years afterwards, right, with emulation and all that, I was able to go back and try this game out, the Sega CD version, and it's cool. I mean, I could see how the scaling and all that on these driving scenes would have been impressive, but it's just really hard though, and kind of frustrating. So I was a bit disappointed that it didn't really, I guess, live up to how much they were hyping this game up back then. But let's see. So the Terminator. So I talked about this game already last month. How I was a bit disappointed with it. Ended up returning it. Played it many years later and actually kind of liked it. Bram Stoker's Dracula. This game back then was visually pretty impressive. And I mean, nowadays it's really grainy and all that, and so it doesn't look that great. But back then, though, again, because the technology was so cool, basically it's like a CG background that's animated and all. So almost like it's like a video that's looping over and over, right? And all that kind of makes up the background, and then the characters are like, I don't know if they're like a combination of sprites or polygons. I'm not sure, but it at the time I thought it was really impressive looking, even at the gameplay. Even back then I didn't think it was the greatest, but I just really enjoyed seeing it because again at the time the graphics looked really impressive, and the music I remember too was really good in this as well too. I almost want to play this game again, just I don't know, just again the graphics I thought were something else back then. Jungle Strike. So Jungle Strike and Desert Strike, they were pretty popular games. I never really got into them too much, but I do remember them being pretty popular. Afterburner 3, again, got horrible reviews, so not one that I'm really interested in. King of Fighters. I should try playing the Neo Geo one. I believe I have it on my Switch. But yeah, it looks like they did a pretty decent port to the Sega Genesis. So good job, Takara. Flashback. Yes, I love this game. So I'll read this review here. So every so often in the world of video games, a company for one reason or another decides to do something special. Why just make a game when you can leave your mark by doing something that will stay in gamers' minds and conversations for years to come? Delphine's latest entry into the Sega Genesis lineup is one of those games. To go into detail would take pages of text, so I'll let you experience the details for yourself. For now, let me just spark your interest with a basic overview. Flashback follows the tradition of Out of This World, only this time around it's with much more animation, color, interaction, and story. In fact, the story now unfolds before your eyes throughout the game. The game is crisp and precise, gone is the sluggish control, and once you get it down, Conrad controls with pinpoint accuracy and everything moves along at a fast action game pace. Another big surprise is the ultra smooth scaling in the story mode and many added frames on the character. I've never seen the Genesis look better. All I can really tell you without getting technical is the bottom line. Buy this game, it will definitely provide any gamer many hours of addicting gameplay and stay in your collection forever. Flashback is one of the most amazing cartridges games ever made. I mean, they definitely hyped up this game and all that, but it is really cool. It's the animation to it was really stunning. The story too also was pretty sophisticated. I mean, for the time, definitely felt like a combination of like Total Recall and Flashback, and the cinemas, the way they were doing them, where it had kind of like almost what looked like maybe polygonal characters, was I mean it was a really impressive game, and yeah, definitely really enjoyed this game. Humans, don't remember that. Bulls versus Blazers, a basketball game from EA. I remember the first we got Lakers versus Celtics, which was the one that came out before this, and then Bulls versus Blazers was the one that I remember I always wanted to get but never did though. Actually, I know I played it somewhere though. It might have been at that Wheels and Wings place I've talked about before, but didn't actually own it though. Mutant League Football. I remember renting this game a handful of times, and we had a blast with it. Playing this game doubles with me and my brother, and I think some of our friends. And we had fun playing this game. It's just silly. It's fun. Let's see, RBI Baseball. Tommy La Russa Baseball. Okay, so this is from EA Sports where they were starting to do their thing on a baseball game. Al Michaels announces Hardball 3. So again, there was a lot of sports games coming out from many different developers, so a lot of variety. This game, what is it called? Night Strikers, I think. This game actually, I just saw that recently. It's available on the Switch. I might check it out, but it's like some kind of a, I don't know, like a flying racing like shooter of some sort, 3D shooter. Um, and I remember that back then they thought that the scaling and all that was pretty impressive. It's a port of an arcade game, I believe, and I think the one that's on the Switch is the actual arcade version. Oh, okay, but yeah, I remember this. They were talking about how the music is also from Zuntana. I don't know if Zuntana is the name of a person or a group, but basically they had really cool music with like Ninja Warriors. I guess this, and I want to say I think also on some of the Darius games also. Just really good music. Devastator. So this seems to be some kind of a Sega City shooting game. Never did play that one. I think it was Japan only also. Mazin Saga. So yeah, so this game was pretty cool. Illusion City. This one here, I remember I always thought looked really interesting, and I was always hoping that they would have brought it out to the States, but basically it's from what it looks like, kind of like a cyberpunk sort of RPG of some sort. Yeah. Yeah, I just remember looking at the screenshots of this and all. I was like, "What? Blade Runner Fantasy Star 2? Like, what? What is this? I want this." But yeah, it never came out here in the States. It's 3D Cotton Game, Bubsy, that X Bronze game we talked about a couple issues back. Socket was pretty cool. Sylphid, of course, was looking better and better. And then here's where they started, really, where they're starting to show more screenshots of Fantasy Star 4. Though ever since Phantasy Star 2, probably the best RPG ever created on cartridge, and after the disappointment of Phantasy Star 3, I have been hoping that 4 would have had the same play mechanics as 2. Sega has granted my wish. Not only will this new 16 meg version feature the awesome fight scenes of Part 2, but also feature fully animated enemies. If you played Part 2, you can imagine how incredible this game is going to be. Stay tuned. Yeah, Phantasy Star 4. I definitely like it, but well, we'll get more into it once they start talking about the game when it actually released. Tasmania on the Super Nintendo. Dream Probe. What is this? On the Super Nintendo also. Oh, never heard of this game. Bubsy. So Bubsy, you might know for having like one of the worst 3D platformers of all time. So this is where he was getting a start here in 2D. Looks like apparently came out on the Super Nintendo first. I never did play this game, but never really had too much of an interest in it. Star Fox. So wait, didn't they review this already? But yeah, I mean, this was impressive, seeing this 3D for the first time. I mean, it's giving us a glimpse of the future. Run Saber. So this game was like an action game that seems like it kind of played like a little bit like Strider. Never did play it. Adam's Family game. Super Baseball 2020. Advertisement for that Super Turrican game. And then the review also here. The Sega Genesis one is the one that I got into, Mega Turrican, and I really love that one. But that one seemed to be kind of use some of the same assets and all as in style of this one here. I actually like this. This level looks good, very similar to the one that was on the Sega Genesis. Tough Enough. So looks like a beat 'em up from Jaleco. Super NBA Basketball. So this is a basketball game from Tecmo. So Tecmo had some pretty decent sports games. Like this one seemed to be pretty well received, and then the Tecmo Bowl obviously also. Cool World, Elnard, Elnard. That was a Japanese RPG on the Super Famicom. Ogre Battle. This one that was really popular. I think I've heard about this game. Like with a lot of these strategy RPGs that have been coming out, they seem to reference this game a lot, Ogre Battle. But then this Neo Gear, I think is how they said last issue was pronounced. Dragon Ball Z. Never really gotten into Dragon Ball Z. I know it has a huge following, but I don't really. I mean, other than that they go Super Saiyan, I don't really know a whole much about it. Great Battle 3. No, okay, so these are like import games. What is this? Twinbee. Okay, yeah, the kind of cutesy shoot 'em up game from Konami. And let's see, so here they're previewing R-Type 3 Art of Fighting on the Super Nintendo. Let's see, Final Fight 2. Looks like they were getting a version of Cotton also. East was also coming out to the Super Nintendo. And for the TurboGrafx, we had this Dungeon Explorer 2. Part 1 seemed to have been one of the better games on the TurboGrafx, so looks like this one was better. Oh, okay. I remember seeing the screenshot. I thought that always looked kind of cool. This right here also. Yeah, if I remember right, I think I actually used to try to draw something like this. Maybe one of these days I will sit down and just dedicate some time to playing some TurboGrafx games and just really try to get into the library. I've played them here and there, but nothing. Haven't really gone into the depths of the library. Oh, the Neo Geo. Well, not the Neo Geo, the TurboGrafx. Fiend Hunter. Okay, so these are PC Engine games, so imports. Those become like a big deal, right? With cinemas on some of these CD games that were coming out. Fatal Fury 2. I remember looking at the screenshots of this, and for some reason, I mean, I really enjoyed Street Fighter 2, but for some reason, I wanted another game to best it for some reason, and I kind of thought that Fatal Fury 2 might be it. I don't know why I always think of that. I think it's just one of those things where, like when something's really popular, you just have to hate it for no reason. Maybe that was my attitude, but I did enjoy the layout of this review that they do here where they show the moves of the characters, the whole level layout. I thought that was kind of cool. I used to like when magazines did that back then. Yeah, but yeah, if you ever play the arcade version of this and all, like I said, the one that's on the Switch, it's really hard. Super Strikers game. I played a little bit of this. It's kind of fun. But I remember looking at these screenshots. I was like, oh my god, look at the detail on that. And it is impressive still. And the graveyard. So Atomic Kid. Wasn't this on a previous one? I don't remember. Okay, other stuff. What are they talking about here? All right, so I'm just going to kind of skim through this. Obviously, feel free to pause the video if you wanted to read through this all. I'm just going to sort of skim through it and see if I find anything that's interesting here worth mentioning. Let's see. Okay, so they're here. They're now. Let's see. So this is regarding for the Sega Genesis, but perhaps the best news of all is the fact that Capcom is now an official third-party license. This means that Mega Man, Ghouls and Ghosts, and other Capcom originals may finally make their way onto many Sega formats, programmed by the masters and not reprogrammed goo like mercs. Okay, they're starting to talk about how they started development on Aladdin, which ended up being a really good game, a really popular game on the Genesis, and that it was also being done by that David Perry guy, the guy that just, we just checked the reviews on for Spot and Global Gladiators. So, okay, yeah, so he did Global Gladiators also. So can you imagine what he can do with 16 meg and the Disney animators? Yeah, I mean, and Aladdin ended up being a really cool game, as you'll see in these later issues. Let's see. So here's where they finally announced officially Castlevania Bloodlines. Well, it says working title, but that is what it was ended up being called. So yeah, like I said, I was all about that. I was like, yeah, we're getting a Castlevania game. I thought that was so cool. Oh, excuse me. Let's see. So for the Super Nintendo, so they were talking about like Super Mega Man, R-Type 3, Ninja Gaiden 4. So Super Mega Man, I would assume that would have ended up being Mega Man 7. Ninja Gaiden 4. I don't think that there wasn't a original Ninja Gaiden game on the Super Nintendo, right? Because I know that they had the kind of like a remastered of the trilogy of the Ninja Gaiden games from the Nintendo, but I don't think that they had an original Ninja Gaiden game, as far as I know. Let's see. Okay, so here's some of the things that they're talking about the Nintendo CD. So some of the pages cut off here, right? But I'll just try to read it here as best I can. So it says, I know a lot of you are either counting or wondering about the supposed Nintendo CD. So here's the deal. Many recent articles in Japanese stress say that Nintendo is not really concentrating on a CD right now. Instead, they are looking to the SFX chips. Their view is that the system is so new and affordable along with the addition of the SFX chips, why release a high price CD? I'm sure they are waiting to get a look at 3DO before they take the leap to CD. To this date, there are no certain specs on the Nintendo CD. Anyway, popular opinion amongst industry insiders say don't look for CD until sometime in '94. Look at it this way: if Star Fox is just a small sampling of SFX technology, just think of what the future will bring. And there's no new hardware to buy. Remember, Nintendo's very, very market wise. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So because I mean, I think that the popular opinion is that, so for anybody that knows anything about video game history, right, is that so it was a Sony that was going to partner with Nintendo to create this CD add-on, and it was going to be called the PlayStation, the Nintendo PlayStation, where it would play the Nintendo games, but then also CD games. But the deal, I don't know the specifics, but it ultimately benefited Sony. So Nintendo ultimately said, like, wait a minute, we're not about that. Because again, Nintendo's very protective of their IP. They're very protective of their just overall brands and their company name and all that, for better or worse, right? And so at the last second, they backed out of the deal in kind of a crude fashion, right? Where they embarrassed them, basically. They embarrassed Sony in front of everyone, and they partnered with Philips and made this CDI thing that had like some lame Zelda games in it and all. So that part is kind of weird, because it's like, okay, you didn't want to go with Sony, but you still went with another company, though. Was it just out of spite, or was it just because the deal favored you guys more, right? Where it didn't in Sony's case, or had they gone with Sony? So maybe that is it. I don't know that part of it there, but yeah, I mean, and so then eventually Sony ended up creating their own PlayStation system, right? And well, the rest is history. And so I think a lot of people, because then eventually what happened, right, is that the in the next generation, Sony dominated Nintendo and kept dominating for years, right? Until more recent times with the Switch. But so I think a lot of people speculate that that would have been better for Nintendo to have gone with Sony, right, and made this PlayStation, and maybe the video game industry would have been different, and they would have continued to stay on top. But I mean, who knows, right? Because the difference, I think, a lot of it is just that, and again, I'm just speculating here, but Sony is an electronics company, right? Not just a video game company. So meaning that they make their own devices, like back then, like stereos and TVs and cameras and CD players, right? So I would assume that they have all the connections as far as acquiring the parts for all that, because the systems were so the thing about, like, if you have a CD system, and again, this is for back then, is that your system is going to be more expensive, but the games are cheaper, and but so you can kind of offset the costs on that, right? And all, but with Nintendo, where they're just a gaming company, and so had they gone with to make a CD system, like maybe the way they were, from what it sounds like, what they were trying to do with Sony, that might have not really favored them. I mean, they might have made that decision because it really wouldn't have benefited them in the long run, because they would have had to have sold a Nintendo, let's say the PlayStation or whatever that system would have been called, uh, not only for the Super Nintendo add-on, but potentially in the next generation if it was a CD system, and that may not have benefited them as much as we might have think, right? Because we all say, like, well, Nintendo went with cartridge and all that, and it bit them in the ass and all. I mean, it did, to an extent, yeah, absolutely, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not fully convinced that the going CD would have been the best route. Also, again, that's just complete speculation on my part. It's just something I was thinking about sometimes when I go back and read this on what happened back then. It was really crude the way that Nintendo backed out of the deal, for sure, but they might have had a point though, and it might have been really in their best interest, right? So, like it says here, right? I mean, they are pretty market wise, so again, that's just speculation and all that, right? I mean, that's a big what if, probably one of the biggest what ifs in the gaming industry. Like, what if Nintendo and Sony would have partnered together? Um, but yeah, just kind of interesting right here where we're already talking about, like, maybe they weren't as interested in going CD at the time. But anyways, let's see. So here they're showing pics of the FM Town Marty. So this is like some kind of a PC console, I guess, that was in Japan. That was like, I think it's considered like the first 32-bit system that came out. I think is not amongst the earliest. Here's an artist rendering of this Genesis 2. This trimmed down new system will be available later this year at around 199. So we didn't have, so we had this model of the Sega CD, well, with the Model 2 version, right? And so here's now that Namco has signed with 3DO, games like Galaxian 3 and Starblade don't seem far out of reach. So yeah, I mean, I just remember looking at the screenshots of this, and I mean, you can't really tell exactly what's going on, but I remember looking at it, I was like, wow, this looks like the future. It just looks so far ahead, right, of what we were already having before, and I couldn't even fathom to think what games would have looked like, right? But yeah, it was interesting times. Tom Kalinske, there's the man. Street Fighter 2 on the PC Engine. It's a pretty decent port. I've played it on emulation, and yeah, I mean, it plays pretty well. Definitely a very playable, very good port of Street Fighter 2 on the PC Engine. And here's a ad for Wing Commander. Some more ads. The Postmeister section. Okay, so this one. because this one gets a little spicy. So, dear Postmeister, I'm a diehard Super Nintendo gamer, and I love your magazine. However, why are you people favoring Sega so much? So, and granted, they did, right? But here, they're getting called out on it. So let's hear them out. So, is it because Wolf Team, a devoted Sega licensee, is working with you? All of your covers and reviews also favor Sega to Nintendo. Once the big N CD-ROM hits the market, Sega will bite the dust hard. If you print this letter and show why your if you print this letter and show why your Mega is top notch, you'll have my respect. Sushi X, parts unknown. Dear Sushi X, the Sushi X we don't know. So Sushi X, there was another, probably the more popular gaming magazine back then was EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly. So they're sort of like the IGN of nowadays, right? I don't know if there's a connection between the two, but yeah. But EGM was really popular back then. Definitely the more mainstream magazine from back then. And oops, did I bump this? So one of the reviewers was Sushi X. And from what I recall, he was a bit of a controversial reviewer. Nothing too crazy, I think, and all that, but anyways, so I don't know who knows if it was actually the Sushi X and all that, but it looks like, I'm just kind of looking at this like, really, Sushi X? Like, not the Sushi X, but I don't know for sure. But anyways, their reply is, first of all, we are not working with Wolf Team. They have simply chosen us to show their games first in the US. We have many friends in Japan who we work closely. Secondly, we do not favor Sega. It's just that right now they are on a roll. Also, they have been much easier to work with, getting reviews, materials, etc. Actually, many of our staff favor Nintendo. It's just that lately, the big titles have been too few and far in between. Where's Metroid, Mega Man, and Ninja Gaiden 4 to name just a few that should be out by now? As far as the Super NES CD, don't hold your breath. Nintendo is going to get some mileage out of the SFX chip for now, so don't look for a CD unit until 1994. There's still no official specs for the system. As far as Sega biting the dust, I don't think so. Sega could drop a 32-bit system in your lap tomorrow, but why should they? They haven't even nicked the surface of what the CD can do, and things are just going fine. When it's time to answer, Sega will. So, do I have your respect now? That's funny. So that was how there was like our little feuds that we have online now on Twitter, whatever, right? You mailed it in and then had to wait for the issue to come out, and if it even got published and all that. So, different times. Which is probably better because God, when you see everything nowadays all at once, it's a little intense. But yeah, and then just more ads here at the end, and then an ad here for Alien 3 on the Nintendo and Game Boy, which that actually looks pretty impressive there for the Nintendo. And this gift package that they were giving away. Shadowrun. This kind of seems interesting. And James Bond to end it out. So yeah, that is this issue here. Definitely, that took me back down memory lane. So that was cool. And yeah, Cool Spot. If you get anything from what I've talked about in this issue and all that, definitely check out Cool Spot. It's a fun game. Really, it plays really well. The character, Cool Spot, when you first start walking, he seems a little slow and sluggish and all, but just give it a bit of time and all that, because actually it works well within the constructs of the level design of the game, and I think you'd have a really good time with it. It is really a fun game, and if you like 2D platformers, that is a bit of a collectathon as well too. But yeah, that was fun, little trip down memory lane. Hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you hopefully next week with issue number 7. Have a good one.